Thank you, sir. Like Ian said, my name is Jerry Michels. I'm a member of the Missouri Pacific Historical Society. I've been involved with this since 1980, so when we met as a small group in St. Louis and decided we could probably put something together. So it's been a very enjoyable ride for the last 50 years. And so today I want to talk about the Southern Illinois coal fields. Let's see. There we go. Okay, I was originally interested in modeling the Missouri Pacific, like from St. Louis to Kansas City, because I lived in Washington, Missouri, which is about 50 miles west of St. Louis, and the Mopax double-track main line was not too far from my house. But I didn't have any space to do that, and there were a pair of articles written by Joe Colias that were published in the Eagle on the Southern Illinois coal fields, and that got me thinking about what I could realistically build. It was about 85% complete, and I got a medical problem. I have a neurological problem. Some rogue antibodies decided to attack my pituitary, and I couldn't work on the lathe anymore, so it came down last year. What I'd like to do this morning is take a look at the history of the area, how I gathered information, and the resources I used. First, we'll take a look at publications that are available that I used to help me center myself in Southern Illinois. I know most of you are familiar with the Q in the coal fields. This was probably the biggest find I made, and I read this book backward and forward, mainly looking for Missouri Pacific information, and there is a good amount there for any of you who are interested. And this is the first article by Joe on the Southern Illinois coal fields. Okay. There aren't a whole lot of publications like books and stuff, but there's still a lot of other good information. Next, we'll look at some maps. And Missouri Pacific was an amalgamation of a number of railroads. It went all the way out to Denver, down to the Gulf Coast, up into Nebraska, and then over in Illinois, where we're going to concentrate today. But a lot of these were small railroads that were built, mainly established to build a section of the railroad, and then it was incorporated into Missouri Pacific as such. One of the largest mergers was the Missouri Pacific and the Iron Mountain and Southern, St. Louis Iron Mountain and Southern in 1915. And prior to that merger, the Iron Mountain was the railroad that ran this area. And it was the same with the Southern Illinois. There were at least 9 short lines that were constructed in this area, all advancing versions of the St. Louis Iron Mountain and Southern, which itself was merged into the Missouri Pacific in 1915. And we're right down here, and this is Marion. And this is the main line coming out of St. Louis down through Gorham. And this is just a very small number of the actual lines, the rails that were in there, because all the coal lines were served too. So this is the Illinois division from Valley Junction to Cairo, and then also this line from Gale to Paragould was included in the Illinois division. So there were 3 subdivisions, the Mount Vernon from Chester, here we go, up here, there, Chester to Mount Vernon, the east and west from Gorham up to Benton, and from Bush it was called the Benton subdivision, and then all these lines out to Johnson City, Fulton, Marion, Bush, Heron, all these were all small branch lines that served the coal fields. This is another map, not too great, but it was interesting because this is a Missouri Pacific Railroad map, and it has this yellow line in here and this is the CNEI. And I think that this map was written or drawn up to show where the CNEI would fit in the Missouri Pacific system when they were looking at merging. And one final map, this is also railroad generated, and it shows these different branches, and if they had, how many switches they had, how many signals they had, switch stands with lights, and if there was night operation. I don't know if any of you have used condensed track profiles before, but they're very helpful trying to locate specific facilities, which you might want to build or your model on your railroad. It takes a little while to get used to all of the different abbreviations, but once you get the hang of it, then it goes along pretty easily. This is a map of Chalk Junction at Heron. The first map outlined to Johnson City. I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble reading this. The line to Carterville is shown at the lower left. One online mine shared with Illinois Central, a compact barrier yard right here for hopper storage, a water tank, and the lead to the Old Bend mine. Like that, they don't show all that trackage, but this went up to the Old Bend mine, number 1, I believe. Or, excuse me, that's not. Number 18? Yeah, okay. The second map shows the junction from the Carterville branch perspective. So if you had a line that split and it went two different directions, the profile maps will show, let's say, we'll go on here. I think it'll become a little bit clearer. This is Bush, which was the marshaling yard for all of the lines coming out of Illinois. The coal was marshaled here into hopper trains. It went down to Gorham, and then from there north to St. Louis. And this, you can see that it shows that there were section houses. It also shows the water tank in capacity. It's stylized, definitely, but you can figure things out and then match them up with actual maps or pictures or whatever. And then this is Ziegler, which is a little bit east of Bush. And the reason I put this in here is that you can see there's the Bell and Zoller Ziegler number 1 mine, and the Orient mine is off this direction. But you had the CD&Q and the Illinois Central and the CNEI all vying for business at these coal mines. If you go to Google Earth and you do some zooming around, you can find this Y. It's gone. The mine's been gone for I don't know how long, but you can see where the roadbed was, and you can see that actual Y and follow a lot of the trackage to where the mine used to be. This is a railroad map of Bush. This is the line down to Gorham on the river. This goes up to Ziegler and then eventually to Benton. And then this is the line, the east and west subdivision that went to Heron. So you can see the facilities that were at Bush and the rail lines where they split here. And you can see they had pretty good sized yards for hoppers. This is a little bit more of a close-up of the roundhouse, the cooling facility, and scale house, which was right here. And we'll come back to some actual pictures of these in a little while to make it clearer. Sanborn fire insurance maps are also a good source of information. It's too bad that you don't find them in the 40s and 50s. They're usually from the teens and 20s, but it can still be helpful. This is a Missouri Pacific line coming into Heron, and the Illinois Central and the Coal Belt Electric Railroad, which was actually by this time part of the Missouri Pacific. And they had a passenger depot downtown, and another one, a freight depot up in this area. This is an interesting little item from a Sanborn map, and was on the Cobalt Electric. This was the Egyptian power company. It produced explosives from the 1900s through the 1950s. According to the drawing, this was on the Cobalt Electric line, which became part of the Missouri Pacific. This company blew up. I found at least 3 records of it blowing up. And so if I was running a local in there, I don't know that I'd be really happy. Okay, let's take a look at employee timetables and special instructions. Everybody's probably pretty well familiar with employee timetables. You can find it for the division with Missouri Pacific, and then kind of get an idea of what year you want to pursue, and it will fit my interests. You don't have to be exact. You can model the transition era. Keep in mind that a lot of the structures didn't change a whole lot between 1945 and 1955. As the diesels came on, roundhouses and cooling towers came down, but it didn't happen overnight. New diesel facilities also took time to build. Steam and diesel shared facilities for a number of years. This is the inside of an employee timetable, and this is the east and west subdivision between Gorham and Marion. And we can see here, this gives the trains where they originated from, where they terminated. On the east-west subdivision, there were few scheduled trains. Most were run as extras, and no passengers in this time period. There was passenger service early in the teens and 20s, but that was pretty well gone by the 30s. You can see here Red Ball Freight 371 arrived at Bush at 5:15 a.m. And it came up from Gorham. 396 left Bush at 8 a.m. And went to Gorham arriving at 9:30, and it returned to Bush as 395 later in the day. I believe that this train then left Bush at noon and traveled to Benton, arriving at 1:05. After an hour stay, it went back to Bush, arriving at 3:15. Employee timetables are great for this, for train numbers and all this, that, and the other. These are not, would not be coal drags. They'd be the freight, other than coal. All of the mine runs were treated as extras, as Missouri Pacific did most of its trains. From what Joe Colias told me many, many years ago, is that the number of a train and the times that was supposed to be at a certain station, the reason they published those is that the train couldn't go past that station at that time and continue on. So it was more of a thing of kind of making sure that the trains weren't outdistancing themselves. Of course, this was, they had train orders too, that they could schedule a lot of the trains, but they found it a lot more efficient to run them as extras. Special instructions are also very interesting, and you could do a whole talk on these. You can find the location of business tracks. They're not in the employee timetable. So these are great when you're modeling or trying to do the history of a town or whatever that may not appear in that more formal schedule, but it did have business tracks that were there. This is the Mount Vernon sub, and then the east and west, and Benton, and then Cairo and Cape Girardeau. And these were supplements to the operating rules, so the employees kept these with them all the time. Lists of stations and time books. For Missouri Pacific people, circular number 7 is almost invaluable if you want to decode time books, and they're also quite helpful with employee timetables too. They show all of the stations on the system, and usually the front section is done in alphabetical listing. by the station number, and the last half of it is done by the individual towns or the individual stations in alphabetical order by the name, their location. You know, other than if you had wheel reports, would be great that a conductor took when he was running a train. But other than that, time books are just fabulous. I was lucky to find one in the last 10 years or so that dealt with the Illinois division, and I'd love to find an employee who worked a mine run. This was mainly a fellow that worked on the Illinois division from Bush up to Dupont. A conductor's wheel report for the mine runs would be a gold mine. I mean, you could build a whole model railroad on one conductor's wheel report probably. As you can see, these are the stations and the location. Bush had the code CD24, and that was a base code for all east and west subdivision stations west of Bush and all Benton stations. CD was the base code for the east and west subdivision stations east of Bush. So you can see here where I've marked off the different codes. And there wasn't always necessarily a big station there. It may have been a physical location, and it may be a switch in a phone booth. This is the inside of that time book that I found. I love model railroading, and I love railroad history. Interpreting what somebody wrote down 75 to 50 years ago, whatever, is difficult. Sometimes these folks had very, very nice handwriting, and sometimes it was almost indecipherable. This isn't too bad. This fellow, Mr. Brown, did a pretty good job. The red box up here at the top, it was an extra. The locomotive was a 418. It was the 29th of the month. He went from Dupont, which is station C15. This is where that circuit would come into effect. He left at 1:30, and he arrived at Bush at 11:20. Looks like I can't read that crease. And then here's his run back from Bush up to Pinckneyville, and which is CH31. So if you're thinking that he was just doing a turn from Dupont to Bush back to Dupont, you'll find out here, if you know what the code is, you can figure out that he went from Pinckneyville on the 30th. The yellow box shows that he worked from Pinckneyville on an extra, again, 418, so he was staying with the locomotive, at least for the time being. And probably dead-ended back to Dupont for a run to Gale on the 3rd. The red box illustrates another Dupont Bush Pinckneyville depot run from July 6th to the 8th. The next run, which is the orange box, he did on July 9th. It's kind of interesting because he went from station X166, which is Poplar Bluff, Missouri. It was from Dupont to Poplar Bluff on Missouri Division, and then back the next day. It's another run to Bush in November. Engine 1542 was used from Dupont to Bush, but number 1495 was used for the rest of the trip from Pinckneyville and back to Dupont. I'm going to go through a few of these slides pretty quickly, but I know you can't memorize all this quite easily. This was a little Excel sheet I built up to show what stations I was going to have on the layout, off the layout to the west, off the layout to the east, and then on the layout. And you can see where I was trying to model. I love putting this information together. It's pretty easy to do in Excel spreadsheets, and once you learn the fellow's handwriting, you can kind of just go along and start filling in the spreadsheet. You can kind of make up an employee timetable and then put runs that were done. Or since most of them showed the locomotive that was used, you can start putting them together and then start to summarize that information and find out what were common locomotives used in the area, how many times they appeared, were they used a lot, just once. This is Illinois subdivision, and there were the FAs and the FUs like this probably didn't make it up to Bush. They were probably mainline freights on the Illinois division down to Gale. Okay, now photos. This is Chester, Illinois. That train is headed north. See an old caboose, old car. They had a ramp for loading barges at Chester. Spot class consolidations for non-Missouri Pacific people. Spot class is the #1 class. They were the main steam locomotives on the coal branches due to light rail. The 21, 28, and 77 were photographed at Bush in 1955. Number 28 is probably already in the scrap line. Number 51 was photographed at Ziegler in 1938. And all of these have come from the Volrath collection. Number 100 and 127, both at Bush. The 1229 is a Bush jug mill and rear of a very old side door caboose, and the 1280 is of Pinckneyville, Illinois. The 1200 series Mikados were Iron Mountain locomotives. They were light USRA locomotives. Interesting enough, Joe Clise had built about 4 of these, and they're now out in circulation since he's passed on. These are the big heavy mics, the 1401 class, were found at Bush, but they didn't go any further than that because of the weight on the rails. So they were mainly going from Gorham to Bush and back again. Both of these were photographed at Bush in the early 1950s. A bit is known about specific locomotives, and we did have these locomotives were assigned to mine runs, 280, 4852, 123, and 134. And 143 and the 282, a lighter Mikado, the 1266, were assigned to Bush Yard. 282, 1229 was assigned to the Orient mine near Ziegler. So that mine was busy enough that the Missouri Pacific had locomotives stationed there all the time. When steam was replaced in 1955, the branches were populated by GP7s and GP9s. Records are very sparse. It's not known if any Alco diesels were used on the mine runs. A good employee time book for this era would answer a lot of these questions. These are some shots, good and bad, of locomotives that were owned by the mines themselves and did the hustling. There are, shunting coal cars around. This is a pretty bad picture, but obviously a tank locomotive, an 040, the coal bin on the back and the water saddlebacks. This is probably the best picture I've seen of a mine-owned locomotive. This is an ex-Illinois Central locomotive, but very nicely done. Even put Ziegler coal, and this, which is unreadable, says superwashed. So they were advertising. You kind of wonder if they were advertising so the public could have seen this mine or the locomotive pretty easily. Wouldn't make too much sense to put a lot of decoration on it and then just have it out of sight. This is a much poorer rendition of the other side of the 101. This is the Franklin County Coal and Coke, number 380. It says Franklin County Coal and Coke here. Whether it was a large tipple coal washing facility or a single car dump, coal was king down here for many years. A lot of nice pictures can be found of coal mines a lot of times people took pictures specifically of the coal mines, but obviously included in that ended up being a lot of railroad equipment. So you can find Missouri Pacific, Burlington, CNEI, Illinois Central, Hoppers, and gondolas. This is Ziegler mine number 2. This is Sherrard. It's north of the coal fields, but it still illustrates kind of the complexity of these structures. This was a great find for me when I was working towards getting my railroad done. This is Bell and Zoller number 1 in Ziegler. And you can see it was a massive, this structure. This is the coal storage where they would fill the cars, and here it is in the lower picture. And this one is really nice. You see the railroad. You can see all the different structures that were associated with the mine. Would be a great way to make a diorama. And then this is a Sanborn map of the area. And it identifies a lot of the different mine structures. This is the Benton, Illinois depot. I guess it still exists. This is from, I think, 2014. It was similar to the original station built by the Iron Mountain at Heron on the coal belt. It's not railroad owned, and I doubt if many freights stop these days. This was the original Ziegler depot. It was a 2-story wooden depot, and this was scanned from a book on Ziegler. Surprisingly enough, there is a lot of information available, like at the public libraries, chambers of commerce, things like this. There were quite a few books that were done by groups locally for these small towns, like Ziegler, which is about, I think about 1,600 people. And there's at least 2 really good softbound books on those that historical societies did or civic groups. Oops. Okay, this is Heron. This is the depot that was built for the Coal Belt Electric. 2 lithograph postcards. And then this is an actual picture postcard of that depot. I believe it was under construction at this time. And through the portico here, you can see the Illinois Central Depot that was right across the mop tracks. And if you could really blow this up, there's an Illinois Central boxcar. This is the Heron Freight Depot around 1960. At this time, the line was still in use, but the depot may have been retired. I made a number of trips to southern Illinois before I bought maps that let me find the original Missouri Pacific right-of-way. Over the years, this area of Heron has changed a lot. However, I was thrilled to find that the depot still existed. This was just amazing to me. This is Charles Harper in Heron in 2014. He owns the original Craven's Feed Store and the old Heron Depot on North Park Avenue in Heron. In this shot, Charles is holding an order hoop he found in the depot, and other artifacts include sand buckets, fire buckets, and the original chandeliers are still in there. And when I told Charles that these chandeliers themselves were very sought after and quite expensive if you could find them, he was pretty happy. He had a photo of the feed store as it appeared when he purchased it, but he was not too much. I asked him if I could borrow it, and I put a deposit down on all this, but we really couldn't work on a deal, so I took this photo with my camera through glass. This is posted on the wall, so it's not the best. This is the depot that exists. Nice gabled end. This is looking northwest. This is looking northeast. This is 11 years ago, and it was still in pretty good shape. Obviously, needed a paint job. It's typical Missouri Pacific ladder stations in asbestos shingles with wood bottom and painted chocolate brown. This is a southeast view, and this is a standard Mopac coal shed that they used for if they needed to put coal in a locomotive on a branch line. This is a photo of the coal belt line to Johnson City, but this photo at least survived. Not much in the background. It looks like it's out on the Great Plains someplace. This is the C&E depot at Johnson City, and it was a much more impressive depot, obviously, than the coal belt. Considering that Johnson City was on the main line, it makes sense. This is the Johnson City depot in 2014. And I don't know if it was privately owned, but since it was fenced off, I pretty well figured that it was. And this is a coal belt in the forefront crossing the C&E at Marion. And as most of you know, the depot at Marion is still here. And the line is still there. This is UP now, of course. Coal belt line is completely gone. And this whole area is amazingly different than it is in this picture. And this is the C&E depot in Marion. And I thought I'd throw this in. This is taken at Marion also, and shows one of the motor cars. Also, you can just look for additional period photos that help set the scene, like a coal sales office. This is a railroad YMCA in Bush. And then this is a local goods furniture store in Ziegler. Is there anything around today? The Union Pacific uses a Benton sub to connect with the XC&I tracks to Chicago. The east and west sub out this direction is all gone. On the lines that remain, there are period buildings, trestles, and bridges that existed in the 1950s, but the rest is pretty much history. This area, when you get up on out of the Missouri or Mississippi River drainage, is relatively flat. And when I was modeling, I just had to have a bridge someplace. And so I did find there were bridges on this as it came up out of Gorham. It's kind of a steady grade all the way up to Murfreesboro. The lower photo is a wooden trestle in Murfreesboro. The only railroad structure, Mopac railroad structure, left at Bush is this metal building. It's not regularly manned and used primarily by UP's maintenance way crews. So this is that picture that we looked at a while ago, showing Bush down to Gorham, towards Benton, and then the east and west to Heron, to Heron. And this would be the four directions that are there now, or were in 2014. I was there yesterday, and it's pretty much the same, except they've just recently replaced the grade crossings, torn out what looked like asphalt, and putting concrete grade crossings. I had to throw this in just because I've always found this picture to be fascinating. This is way out of my area, not my railroad, but the rail barge transfer at Joppa I thought was pretty interesting with the different C&E hoppers. And I take it that they transferred from the hoppers through the structure down into the barges, which would have been an interesting operation to see. And then let's go back to Bush for a while in the 1950s. This is an overall view of Bush looking west from the top of the water tank. Note that the tank is topless. It was just an open tub for all practical purposes. The main engine service facility and the scale house right here. Interesting thing about this, you can't see it in this picture, but this is, Mopac numbered its scale houses, and this was scale house number 8. But they put the 8 upside down. So it's bigger at the top and smaller at the bottom. And I'm sorry, I really can't blow this up, but you can. If you do blow it up, like on a computer, you can easily see that. For years, Joe Colias assured me that the MP merchandise cars, the Eagle box cars, would never have operated on these branches. But if you look closely enough, right here is an Eagle merchandise car. And when I showed him this, we both had to laugh because he had sold me the picture. And then it told me for years that, no, I couldn't. Now, one thing he was right. Coming up from Gorham up to the plains, I was always curious if they could have used push or helper service. And we pretty well came to the conclusion that no, because it would all be empties going up, grade, and loads going down. There really wasn't a reason for helpers. This is the coal and sand facilities. The loaded hoppers were pushed up the incline, right here, and dropped into conveyor belt under the tracks. The conveyor buckets picked up coal and delivered it to the waiting engines. So they backed these loaded hoppers up and then let them go down, most likely, I guess, probably just by hand. And then this is the coaling tower. There was a grate underneath here that the coal went into, and then we'll have a little bit better picture later, but this is the feed from the coaling tower. This is the sand house, and American Model Builders made a beautiful model of this. As a matter of fact, Laser Kits and American Model Builders made a number of Missouri Pacific structures that fit right into what I wanted to do. This is looking from the coal tower towards the sand house. You can see the sand house here. The track to the lower left is the incline, right here, where the coal hoppers were spotted. Cinder conveyor over here was a pretty simple device that just took the refuse out of a pit and dumped it into a hopper car. It looks pretty drab and colorless, but a color photo would reveal a roundhouse and sand house painted boxcar red with green trim. Outbuildings, such as the house here for the turntable, were painted colonial yellow with brown trim. But obviously the majority of it was black. A bit of a detail shot showing the coal loader and a man servicing one of the many 280s used on the light rails of the branches. This is the coaling tower, and this is the feed. I scratch built this. I should have brought it with me, but it was fun to build. And I got a minute left, I guess. I wanted to talk just a little bit about an odd thing that I found during this research. I found that Missouri Pacific had Coke cars. This is a home-built Coke car at Herculaneum. Picture was taken by Joe, but Coke came out of Southern Illinois. The Burning Star Mine had 5 cars assigned to it. The rest were, and then there was also Great Lakes Carbon in Carondelet, Missouri, which was a place that Coke was shipped from. I was really interested to have burning interest in the Burning Star operations, but I've not found any information on Sanborn maps or railroad maps that showed coking facilities. If you're familiar with them, they were kind of a beehive shape, and they put the coke in there, or the coal in there, and then let it simmer or whatever under heat, and then would turn it into coke. They did have a second group of coke cars. Curiously enough, I took this picture in Laramie, Wyoming in 1971, as I was probably skipping in class. And there's a pedestrian overwalk in Laramie, still there. And this is the Union Pacific main line. And I had taken this picture mainly because it just had an MP car out on the UP in Wyoming. But I later found out it is probably a coke car heading west to a steel mine in Utah. And at first I thought this was coal, but if you blow it up, you can definitely tell that it's coke. And that about brings me to an end. These are three kids look like they're having pretty much fun, but they actually worked in the coal mines before the child labor laws. And I imagine they led pretty rough lives. Okay, and do you have any questions? Yes, sir.
What's at Bush these days? Is there much of anything left there besides the main line of sight?
At Bush, just that metal UP shed that's used for maintenance away. No, everything else is gone, long gone. And I had a slide here, I forgot to mention it. The one thing you can see there is where the line goes up to Benton, you can still see where the east and west subdivision went towards Heron and Marion, but it's all overgrown. It's been gone since the 50s. Yes, sir.
The first slide you had that showed that had the dots on it,
Oh, yes.
were those all coal mines?
Those were all coal mines. It was, I mean, the whole state is underlain by coal, it seems.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Talk about the Benton Sun. The MOPAC always curved right into the CNEI at Benton. Was Benton a dead end for the MOPAC? Or why was there a connection to the CNEI?
I don't know why there was a connection, but I do believe that was a dead end for it. Going up from Bush towards Benton, there were several very big coal mines and a bunch of others. There were also, there was a branch up to Royalton, which is just about 3 miles. There were coal mines up there, Freemason Spur. So I guess the main line got put in there most likely at the beginning of railroad construction in the area, and maybe Gorham to Benton was considered important, and then all this spider web of branch lines came off of it.
Let's inform our friends out of town about that connection to the CNEI at Benton. The MOPAC was a captive of St. Louis. It was up in Dupont, across the river from St. Louis. It ran down to Thebes, a bridge that goes, and it went on southwest from there. The MOPAC, when it bought or took over the CNEI, had itself now a connection to Chicago.
Yes.
When the Union Pacific took over the MOPAC, they really got busy making that a connection to Chicago, avoiding St. Louis. And in our present day, I mean, there are all kinds of intermodal trains, all kinds of trains going off the line at Gorham, up through Bush, on up to Benton, and then when they slide onto the CNEI, they are on their way to Chicago.
Yeah, the CNI connection to the MOPAC was so important to the MOPAC. Gave them access to, like you say, to Chicago from St. Louis, but also a way to bypass St. Louis. If any of you get a chance, of course, this area is wonderful to just rail fan in, drive back roads, search for right-of-way and stuff like that. You can also, the CNEI main line is pretty busy with UP trains now. But Gorham is also a great place to go. It's that the Illinois division there is incredibly busy north-south. And then at Gorham, there's a Y that goes up this way, or up towards Bush. And it's incredibly busy. And the BNSF is very close by too, I think just across the river maybe, or it may be on this side, I don't know.
It's on the other side.
It's on the other side, okay. All right.
The gentleman asked about what happened when the MOP got to the CNEI. I worked there in 1966, when I worked there when the miners were on vacation. There wasn't a lot of business, worked the agency job there. But I think somehow they connected with the IC on the other side of the CNEI, they interchange with the IC.
Okay. This is at Benton?
That,
Okay.
but that's 59 years ago, and the elevator's not going all the way to the top.
Okay, I guess I better get off to, yeah, one more.
Fun fact, Bush was the last place that Bob had steam engines.
Yes, yeah.
That was where the last holdout was.
Yeah, that's where the funeral train
Yep.
headed out in 1955.
Yep.
Well, yes, sir.
So Jerry, I have one last question. In looking at the map, I didn't see a lot of staging or just the one main area. And I'm envisioning with all these different lines, there had to be a big congestion of the return cars coming back to get more coal. Was there more than one staging line that just wasn't represented, like yards?
There were most likely staging, I would imagine, that strings of loaded hoppers would be brought to Bush and then put together and headed out. I don't know that they do a lot of sorting at Bush, but it was large. These maps don't really give an indication of how big that area was. And the pictures I have really don't show the yards, they show the engine service facilities and stuff. It would be nice to have a big aerial view of Bush in like 1930. I better get off. Thank you.